Hi, and welcome to the Break Digital Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Wood. Today, I'm here with Apryl Syed, the founding partner of Conversion Strategy Group, a business consultant and an expert in revenue optimization and landing pages. She's taught hundreds of business owners the art of selling and now focuses on helping leaders create and execute effective growth strategies. Welcome to my show, Apryl.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Dan.
Yeah, my pleasure. We had a quick chat yesterday and we started talking about a topic that I find really interesting and I think is relevant to everyone in marketing. We talked about what happens when landing pages get emotional, or what happens when landing pages don't get emotional.
Yeah.
And for anyone who's kind of new to this topic who might be listening, a landing page is a web page that's designed specifically as a first page that someone gets to after they click an ad. Usually it's an ad click, but a landing page could be used as a dedicated web page for anything. So rather than just sending someone to your home page, you can send them to something that's more specific to what they were looking for or where they were coming from. So that's when we say landing page, that's what we mean. And Apryl, I asked you what the sort of the most pressing issue is in your work.
We did talk about that, and ultimately I said what's coming up so much recently is kind of like this emotional view and emotional copywriting that often a lot of companies, I'll say 70%, are getting wrong. Really understanding and diving into the persona details and what is happening prior to that click that's getting them to land on your landing page, and then translating what emotion they're coming from to what emotion is going to be needed in order to get them to convert. And really thinking about that process in detail is where I see just a lot of failures in the process of either building a landing page, either from a campaign. It could be an email campaign coming to a landing page. It could be a pay-per-click campaign. It also could be organic. And a lot of people ignore organic traffic sometimes from an SEO perspective, landing on a particular landing page and wanting to convert that traffic. Those are kind of like some missed opportunities sometimes.
Okay, a missed opportunity to turn a visitor into a customer or a lead or a subscriber. And where does the emotional part come in? We're talking about the user experience, right?
Yeah, we're definitely talking about the user experience. We had a client, for instance, that had never done any head-to-head comparison against their competition. And why would somebody be coming to this page from a comparison? Likely their search was, comparison. So let's say the emotional state of that person was because they were frustrated with their current product, which wasn't giving them exactly what they wanted. So that you've got a frustrated user who's now coming to a landing page, and what would be important to show them on that landing page? Right? It would probably be something to ease their frustration, to give them comfort and trust. So you want to push up those testimonials really high up on the page. You want them to understand how easy it is to transition from one product to their product. You want to give them all of that content super high up on the page, as high as you possibly can. Typically between scrolling is only happening maybe like 20 to 40% of users are scrolling past that hero image. So it tells you how impactful that hero image has to be and how you have to get both the statement right, your trust factors up there, image that helps the user identify with themselves, not you identifying with who you are.
Okay.
As the writer, and really translating all of that into thinking about that emotion that they came from and what emotion is going to be needed. Could be comfort, trust, confidence, whatever it is that you want to translate that in to get that person to convert. And part of that is also making sure that your call to action isn't too aggressive and is the right language, the right color, the right, again, imagery for that call to action.
Right. Okay, so you mentioned one stat there that was really interesting. You said as many as 80% of people don't see beyond the fold or the part of the page that loads without scrolling.
Yeah.
Wow, that's huge. Because I see a lot of websites where it doesn't really get into anything informative until much further down.
Right.
So if 80% of your traffic's not seeing that, then
It isn't,
That's
which tells
big.
you how
Yeah.
impactful that hero section becomes. The hero section and maybe like right below it are your two most impactful sections that are going to do the conversion job. The rest of the people are your highly more skeptical personalities. And so you want to give good content for those skeptical personalities that need more information. That's where FAQs at the bottom of the page come in, because you're talking now to a skeptic. And it's important for you to understand that lower on that landing page, it is a more skeptical personality within your persona field. So
Okay.
appealing to them differently than, what might be in the hero image, with content and information that's going to be really useful to converting a skeptic and getting them to come up is
Okay.
is something to really consider and think about.
So the skeptical person there is someone within your customer persona. They've seen your ad, they've come to your landing page, and they've realized this is sort of the right thing for them, but they're still not convinced. They still need a little more social proof or maybe some examples. So these are the people who scroll. They don't fill out the form yet. They scroll because they want to make sure that this is right for them.
Right. And having call to actions throughout that page at different positions is important. It's important for that skeptical user, but don't make the mistake of thinking that that user that's scrolling is everyone. And certainly don't think that it's
Right.
the same as the person who's converting in the hero image.
Okay. Wow. Look, there's a lot of info here. I guess, so for those who aren't really in this space, the landing page is really, really critical, because it's like if the ad was the fish hook, the landing page is like the net that actually gets them into the boat. I think everyone's suspicious that their landing page isn't doing as good a job because no one has a 100% conversion rate. That's just not how the internet works. Where should you look first in optimizing a landing page? What are probably the three biggest things that people, if they're thinking of testing a landing page, that they should consider first?
Well, the very first thing that I see that is quite challenging is just not enough, we'll say like segmentation, essentially, in that landing page. So they're using a one size fits all landing page. All their ads are going to one landing page.
Right.
So how can you speak in that hero image very specifically to a user if it's everybody and you're treating it as if it's your homepage? And some people are sending traffic to their homepage, which
Too many people. Yeah.
too many people are doing that. So what's the biggest problem there when you do that is they can navigate anywhere. And you would think that choice is really good, but choice is not great for conversion, because you want them to be going down a particular pathway and you want to guide them on that pathway. It needs to be logical for that user.
Right.
And that's like, we'll just say step one is that you want to make sure that landing page has limited navigation, that it's only the pathway that you want them to take, and focus, I would say 80% of your effort around how that hero image is really showing up, looking at your traffic, how much of it is on desktop versus mobile, making sure that it renders well on mobile, on your mobile experience, if you have a good number of traffic that's there. And then it becomes about like those details. The language in the ad and the promise that has to make has to be delivered on the landing page. So if you promise something in an ad and you deliver something different on the landing page, what you'll see is high bounce rates. So if you have a high bounce rate on a page, let's say your bounce rate's like 80%, 70% or above, that's because the promise isn't delivering. So there's something with your ad copy and then what your copy is on your landing page that makes the user feel like they got a bait and switch.
Right.
So there's also measurements that you can look at that are going to tell you if you're getting people that are going, and if you're getting good scroll down, that means people are interested. But if they're not converting, then your call to action is probably something that you need to look at. Maybe you're hitting somebody with an ad that's an informational ad. It's the first time that they've seen your ad and they're coming to a landing page and you're asking them to buy. That might be too big of a jump for someone to make, especially if you think mostly what they're looking at is that hero image. And did you give them enough information to convert in that hero? The other thing that I will say, just as a little side note, is that if it's e-commerce and you're taking them to a P2P page, instead of a landing page, we see all the time that a landing page will outperform any P2P page. And the reason being is because you can give more contextual information, testimonials, and lay out that page much better than what a product page could do in any e-commerce solution.
Well, if I'm the e-commerce client, I'm going to say, well, we've put so much work in making our product detail page, our PDP, just perfect with all the info it needs. What do you mean I have to build a different landing page?
So if it's for an ad, you want that ad going to a landing page, and you want the promise of what's in that ad going to describing, right? We need it to match up. And if they're going to a buy, and it's investigative, like what we were talking about, these two things might be too difficult, but joining a mail list might not be.
Okay.
Something to a wish list and making that wish list really easy might not be a heavy conversion, because maybe I want to come back to it later. And now you've got their information. You can market to them, and you can add, remarket them, email them, SMS, whatever it is you can gather from that conversion. Right. There's a lot of tools that can also sit back behind your website today and identify who those users are. So the promise of giving them enough information so they can convert is important. And your skeptic is never going to convert right away. So they want to scroll, they want to find all of the information. I'll tell you an example. So we had a e-commerce client that's also in retail stores. And what we found, and this is the experiment that we ran PDP pages against a landing page. We would get on their landing pages 14-15% conversion rates versus their PDP pages. We're getting like 3%, 4%, 3.5%, maybe 3.25.
Wow.
On average.
So that's the proof right there.
It's a massive amount of difference. And how those pages were organized, right? Your PDP page is, hey, buy. It's all oriented to buying signals, add to cart, all of that. We still had the add to cart on the landing page. I think there's a misconception that you can't add to cart. You can from that landing page. But what we did is offer bundles. So we actually not only increased conversion, but we increased price per cart of that conversion because of the way we were able to bundle products together and get people into buying clubs and things like that. So it was a much higher conversion, and probably a customer that had more affinity for the brand, which is just going to help you long term. And Not everybody thinks about the quality of conversion. And it really does make a difference.
Yeah, that's huge. That's something I talk about a lot in our Google Ads course, is the customer lifetime value. Getting the cart value up or getting the number of purchases per customer will increase your customer lifetime value. And then your cost of acquisition is how much it costs per customer. And if you can get a 5 times higher conversion rate on your landing page, then that's got to be worth doing it.
It definitely is. And, I think it's worth it if you're stuck. We do free reviews all the time of landing pages for people who just want that opinion of, hey, I've got this one page and I need it to do better. We will do a look over and give them all of our best tips of how we would start. We take people through a 4-step process in our landing page testing that I think is unique and different than any other agency out there. And the first phase, we really throw the kitchen sink at it. So when people talk to us, that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about that kitchen sink that we would throw at it, which means we take everything that we've learned from all of the tests that we have running on all of our clients, and we say, this is the best of breed. Let's go and throw it, knowing that we're still learning about their persona and the habits and behaviors of their persona, especially if they don't have any testing behavior or if they haven't been running ads on a major way. So we're going to throw that kitchen
learning
sink.
Too.
Exactly. We're learning together in that experimentation. So once we kind of get that data back, and we hope that improves rates, but it doesn't always. We might learn some behavior. We might learn about color scheme. We might learn about the emotional state of that user, and that will help us refine that page. We then might throw a kitchen sink at it again if we have massive learnings and we didn't increase their rates. If we did increase their rates, we will move to phase 2. And what phase 2 is really about is watching the interaction of the different sections of the website and figuring out what section goes second and third and what's going to be the most impactful for conversion. Again, driving as much as we can possibly up on the page, high trust, high factors, all of those things. So it's about shuffling the deck In page layout is our second phase. When we get to third phase, which is, by the way, where most companies start when you work with a landing page company, they'll start at phase 3. Phase 3 is I'm testing a button, I'm testing a color. You're only changing one element of a page at a time and testing A/B against each other. Again, you have to have enough traffic for that to make sense in order for you to split that traffic and get good, significant data from that. But if you do, and you can run that split test, phase 3 is all about testing one element. Now we're getting into refinements that we will start to understand the specific persona and buyer. And some personas might react one way to one color, and a different persona might react a different way to a different color. It's us finding out those refinements in phase 3. And then we put it into phase 4, which we will say is kind of like, okay, it's in a holding pattern. And as we test other pages and make other learnings, we might go back and make a change where we will A/B test that particular page. So 4 steps in our process to get it into that holding pattern, where we feel like a page could have like slightly incremental changes, but each phase in itself might have 4, 5, 6, 7 iterations. Sometimes in phase 3, we might have 8, 10, 15 iterations of that page to really figure out that buyer.
Wow. So color, it's funny. Some people say, well, the button has to be green because green means go. And other people say big orange button. It's the BOB. It has to stand out. It's got to be an orange button because that catches the eye. Blue is the color of business and it makes you relax, and that's the default of Microsoft Outlook, or Edge now, I guess. So, but you don't really know till you test it, right?
You don't know, again, because if we think about the emotional state of that user and where they are in their journey when they hit that landing page, that's the magic. We have to understand that and where they are and what's going to be the most impactful color that's going to get them to convert, and how can we attract their eye. Of course, there's placement, there's imagery that has eyesight that's going to the call to action button. There are psychological tips that we will use, but that's kind of like our kitchen sink stuff that we're throwing at it. When you're in phase 3, which is really that iteration, we're trying to understand more about we'll say the micro personality of that particular buyer for that particular page. And that's when we're kind of really encouraging brands to transform their ad strategy into getting into those micro personas where some brands haven't gone there yet. And we're saying, let's start slice and dicing the ad so that we have a specific ad with specific language coming to a very specific page, and we're talking to a very specific user. People also get worried then, like, oh, well, I can't segment that much on, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever it might be. But what we're able to do is by language, we are attracting that particular user because they're attracted to that specific language. And then we know that we've got that kind of user that's attracted to that language for that particular landing page.
Right. That's the ad copy to landing page alignment.
Yes.
Right. I always tell people, if you're writing an ad that is doing a very good job of including your target customer, it becomes invisible to everyone else. When you start talking about such a specific experience or empathizing on such a specific pain, then other people will just bypass that. They'll just keep on scrolling because it doesn't click with them. But then
imagine if they then go to a landing page after that great experience that everyone's hitting.
Yeah. Well, I talked to someone a few days ago who they started tinkering with Facebook ads themselves. They're not a marketer. They're like an entrepreneur. And they were thrilled that they had such a high click-through rate. But it's because their ad just said, free sample. It was so generic that literally anyone would click it if they saw it, because who doesn't want? I think it was like, save $100 or some kind of offer that was just. And then the landing page was like accounting software or something that most people don't even want to think about. So, like, why isn't my ad working? Well, yeah, where do you want to start? But yeah, the niching down or the segmentation, the persona, that's so important now because we are every day being conditioned more and more into our own little corner of the universe. When we open our Netflix account or our Amazon homepage or anything, we're getting served our picture. Like, it's our Instagram account. It's not what's on Instagram. It's, all the algorithms are tailoring our experiences to our interests and our behavior. So I think we've almost become spoiled in a way. Everything else is spam if it doesn't talk to like me.
Very true.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to get clients to understand that in a deep way because they're seeing the world from their perspective of here's the stuff I have, come and buy it. It's so good. I spend a lot of time re-educating that or educating that kind of empathy perspective, that user experience, because it's hard to do. It's hard to really get it.
It is. You have to stay in the mind frame and kind of like really put yourself in the position of that persona. There was a client that we had that was selling kind of like we'll say like a program for appliances, kind of like your appliance repair service. And it was in a particular state of Michigan. And we got all of the user demographic data for not only their customers, but like who was buying. And we were able to set up like very, very different messaging for, let's say, the family that's running around, has kids, and how they would want to perceive that program being helpful to them versus the very skeptical, maybe older generation, is getting hit up for a lot and is worried about scams, right? And getting scammed for things and takes that through like that scamming lens. Well, the messaging for that person and the proof and the trust that you have to deliver is very different than the messaging for the family, especially when it's not your product and when it's not what you're selling. It's a lot easier to see it from that lens. But when I'm writing copy for a landing page like that, I want to put myself in the position and think about a person, almost have like, oh, this is Bob, and Bob's in Michigan, and he's, 70 years old. And yes, having, when an appliance breaks down, it's a major inconvenience for him. And he's going to maybe try to fix it himself or think he could fix it himself. But having somebody that he could call might be really helpful. How do I convince Bob that a service like this is a really great idea? And what does he need as proof points in order for him to think about that? That's the mindset that you need to be in, not, I have this service that I'm offering. Let me tell people about it. Let me tell the what. It includes this and this and this and this, and it gets overwhelming for that consumer.
Yeah, I think it's really overwhelming for a lot of businesses to think that they have to now not just have one marketing plan, but have 5 or 10 or 50. Gary Vaynerchuk, in his last book, Trading Attention, talks about how your user personas, I forget what he calls them, micro personas or something like that, where it's not 25 to 30-year-olds living in big cities. It's 27-year-old Spanish-speaking males who live in Miami and like kite surfing. That's if you make a piece of social content for that demographic, it will click. And then you have to do 1,000 others.
It can be overwhelming. And I think that's why we work with, a lot of enterprise organizations, because the rapid amount of testing and turnaround time to deliver a landing page, when we can do it in 24 and 48 hours, where a large team can sometimes get stuck in that process and the review and the cycle, and even making slight changes can become overwhelming. And maybe they're putting it, in a prioritization of many other priorities that they're trying to work with. So sometimes, working with a team that's just focused on that, and that's what they're there to do, is come up with a roadmap of what needs to be tested, for those micro personas. But you're right. Like if you're a smaller organization, like how do you really think about that? Well, you might have, 5 or 6 demographics that you've identified. My tip would be get really good in one, really good in one, then open up your second. Don't try to do all 6 at one time. Figure out what's going to work and do your testing on one that's probably your highest profitability, your highest likelihood of volume, and then learn from that and apply it, what you've learned there to the others, so that you can just get better and better and better.
That's good advice. Win one square and then move on to the next one, right?
Yeah, don't try to divide your tiny marketing team into six. And especially if that's one person or two people, it can get really overwhelming. And I've seen teams try to do that. Or go outside and use an agency that can have, that kind of work. I think I do these drawings on LinkedIn where I kind of like put different drawings that I have to try and break down the concepts of marketing and sales. And
Cool.
one of them was about like when you should use an agency and what percentage of an agency versus in-house, because it's a mix. It's never, 100%. Well, the smaller that you are, the cheaper an agency is actually for you. It's going to be the most lucrative for the amount of resources and the quality of resources that you could absolutely get. What you would pay to bring those kind of resources in-house. The smaller you are, it's the most expensive for you to bring those resources in-house. And if you did, it's likely not going to be the quality that you would get. If you're a medium-sized company, it's a mix, right? And who you should be utilizing is specialties. Specialties where you don't have that specialty in-house and you want to work with an agency that does specialties, but you want your team to really own like brand and maybe social media and things that are kind of like more communicating in your voice from like a content and blog perspective. Keep those things in-house, do specialty things like ads and landing pages and things like that. Let those things be specialties outside so that you get best of breed for those. Okay. And then that shrinks in an enterprise organization. You're just working with specialties, and it's only because you have focus of other priorities internally that are eating up your team's time and they don't have time to focus on a particular thing. So you get specialty, organizations to do just a tiny piece of what you need focused attention on and focused data. And what you're looking for is data that you can then bring back into your broader strategy.
Right. So the benefits of fractional CMO type work, fractional
agency.
Yeah.
Throughout those different.
Very cool. Yeah, I'll be sure to look for that. I like graphical things. Sketches on LinkedIn sounds much better than a lot of the content that's there.
Look, people make fun of me. Like, this is what I just described to you.
That's great, though.
These are the sketches I have sitting on my desk as I kind of think through, break down concepts that might seem really easy from my perspective. But I think, for a CEO who's making decisions about his company, it might seem really confusing. And I'm trying to make it seem as approachable as it possibly can be.
Yeah, that's good. A picture's worth 1,000 words, right? That's what they say. I try to do that too, like bring up a slide or a graphic or some little doodle that's going to
exactly
crystallize the message.
Exactly.
Yeah, very cool. Did you want to talk about the kind of businesses you work with or who your ideal client might be?
Sure. I think different stages. When we work with enterprise organizations, we're really a landing page testing house.
Okay.
So, we serve and work with their ad partner if it's external or if it's their ads team internal. We really work to kind of coordinate and create a roadmap for testing to get appropriate data back so that they can improve conversions over time. High tests like that with high volumes, usually by a third iteration, we're 3xing their landing page conversions.
That's an awesome ROI. So you're working with the ads team. Awesome. So you don't have an ads team in-house, but you're working with your clients.
Usually in those enterprise clients,
or in-house.
We are. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then on the small front, I get really passionate about my smaller clients. We work with a lot of startups. We're here in the Bay Area. So we do have a big handful of startup clients that are forming their go-to-market strategies, that are testing things in the market for the very first time. And they need a very strategic approach, but that emotional approach, right? And really getting into those buyer personas and testing elements in those personas in those early stages is critical for those. So that's more of how we work, with either a super small team or maybe no team. And I'm kind of serving as the executive that's talking to well-rounded executive team that might be super focused on building their beautiful product, and not have time to really focus in on how are we going to go to market and sell this product? How are people going to consume it? What are customers going to say about it? How are we going to get those testimonials? So that's very different. And then when we work with medium-sized companies, we're doing maybe some version of landing pages, some version of strategy, kind of that mix, talked about, where it's just a little bit of both, but it's about finding the right thing for them that's going to give them the right type of quality customers that are going to help optimize revenue.
Very good.
Yeah.
It sounds great. Listen, I really appreciate your time. It's been really interesting. It's been a really interesting few minutes and topics. I would like to carry the conversation on with you again another time, and I think definitely get your feedback on some landing pages that I have and that some clients have too, because if you can 5x your conversion rate, that's huge. I work with a lot of the advertising optimization, and I have a framework where we work through, I have a 4-step process as well for the work inside of the ad platform.
Yeah.
But then what happens after, that landing page, it's always a critical component. And sometimes we actually prove that the ads are working, but the rest of the process is broken.
Yeah.
So
it's a perfect marriage when we find a really great agency to work with, because we're both supporting each other and supplying data that's just going to improve, across the process. There's also sometimes where, we don't get to choose that partner that we're partnering with. And we really find sometimes that, ad agencies can be really focused on their own numbers and not delivering and how they're paid versus delivering that customer that you talked about that's going to be a higher lifetime value.
An ad agency
really
that
sad.
Doesn't care about the results of the advertising doesn't sound like a great business model.
It doesn't. They care about the numbers, right? They're like, oh yeah, well, we delivered so many to this page. Your problem from there. It's tough to see that sometimes in the market. You can notice it. Again, sitting from the outside, it's a lot easier to notice it than from, inside the organization, because they talk to us differently. And so we kind of can scope that out.
Too many times been on the advertising side and had no access or control over the website.
Yeah, that's a tough place to be in.
Send it to the homepage. The website's great.
No.
You're just asking me to burn your money. Why don't we try something that's going to work better?
Yeah. Well, I'd love to continue the conversation, and it's always, it's really great talking to you. I like your energy because it's very calming. And
thanks.
I think we could definitely explore, and happy to look at any landing pages if you want to go through those.
Okay.
We can set some time up to do that.
You ask for it.
No. Bring it on. Okay. And if it stumps me, I'll get one of my CROs to look at it as well.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Apryl.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Until next time.
Really appreciate it. Okay. Sounds good.
Bye-bye.
Bye.